Now we're rolling. Okay. Let's see how I had this. Okay. There are certain individuals that make a difference in the world, not just in their lives, but lives around them. So I met Rick Martin about 20 years ago. We played basketball together, went to church together, and I remember sitting out in his front yard watching tornadoes and bad weather, and he telling stories about, he's pretty knowledgeable on that. So me and Rick have been friends for close to 20 years, and one thing I can tell is that any vision he's ever had, he's carried it out. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Rick.
Well, I'm Rick Martin. I've been in this community for 25 years. Married, got 3 kids. 2 are grown. One's almost one's gonna be a senior this fall. I pastor the Nazarene Church here in town. I'm involved in community events and some of the organizations here, and I'm the president of the Ken Craig Community Garden.
So one of the reasons I got interested in talking to you about doing an interview on you is because we had a phone conversation, just talking. Every once in a while we chat. So how did you get your vision?
Well, I was at a district meeting, and someone there was talking about the effects and the benefits of a community garden, and it actually was one of those things where I had a sleepless night, and I kept thinking about the idea of a garden, and I thought, Lord, if this is something you want me to do, then just wake me again. And he did. He woke me up probably a 3rd or 4th time, and so I started the process. I started to search out what it takes, legally, where to have the garden, just all the things that you have to all the groundwork that you have to kind of do. It's almost like soil prep. You can't just put plants in the ground. You got to kind of amend the soil. You got to work it and get it ready for what you're going to do. And that's kind of the process. That's how it started. That's how the vision started. And I had no clue where it was going to go per se. I knew that it would work. I just had confidence in that. We live in a rural county, and I'm thinking, well, what in the world am I going to do growing vegetables in a place where everything around us is produce? And but there was a plan there, and I'm just trying to be faithful to that vision.
So why is it called Ken Craig? I mean, I just got a little bit of an answer, but why is it called the Ken Craig Community Garden?
Well, Ken Craig was, not only was he my father-in-law, but he was the pastor of the Church of the Nazarene here in Knox, and he believed in helping whenever he could, and he was very compassionate about that. He would drop whatever he was doing, and he would help you to the utmost, and he was very giving, very loving man. And so we got together. We have a garden board, and we decided, we were already thinking about plants, and we thought, well, what are we going to call this garden, this community garden? And we ended up thinking about Ken, because all our conversations, we ended up saying, well, Ken used to do this and Ken did that. Now Ken's gone now. He's been gone for about 5 years. And so we named the garden after him to honor him.
Yep, and I knew Ken very personally. He was a very good guy, and he has made an impact in lives. So I'm not going to ask you what. Well, let me ask you this, because the next question was, who was Ken and what impact did he make, and what impact did he leave? Was there anything particular and personal in your life that he left?
Well, being my father-in-law and also being the pastor of the church I was attending, a lot of times people that are in, let's say, higher positions, we have a tendency to put them on a pedestal. And I can tell you the way Ken was at church was the way he was outside of church. And that was a real big impact. I also got to see, sometimes our heroes, we don't get to see them in everyday life. We don't get to see when they've had a bad day at work, or they come home and maybe they have a headache or a backache or something. And I was fortunate enough to have an example through Ken. He was human, and it was such a blessing to see that. And even though he was human, he was still giving and caring, and he carried that out.
So also in the conversation I told you that intrigued me about this interview with you, you mentioned your wife said you had to do something different than other churches are doing.
Yes, yes. You know, one of the things, there's no doubt that in this county there is a lot of people that are considered at the poverty level or the poor level, and there's food banks here all over the place. But what they don't get in the food banks is fresh produce. You can get all kinds of canned goods, and God bless them. I'm glad that we have these venues where people can go, but they can't get fresh produce. Fresh produce is expensive. You go to the farm markets, you go to any grocery store, and it's 3 times of what you'd pay for it in the can. And so our thought was, let's give back to the community. And that's one of the 3 goals in the missions of the garden, is to give back. And so we work with the Council on Aging, actually called Stark County Community Services now. They have a food pantry. And what they do is, people come in, they can only get so much pounds. Let's say it's 10 pounds or 5 pounds or whatever it is. But if it's fresh produce, it doesn't count against their weight. And so they can take as much as they want, or, you know, however it works. And so that's one of the things we want to do, is just give back.
And that is totally awesome. How soon were you up and running after your vision?
Well, it was the year was it was 2015 in April, and I started making phone calls. And you know, for anyone that would like to start a community garden in their community, there is help out there. You know, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos. I was talking. We're real good friends with a couple out of Portage that. They kind of started, and they had an integral part in the Portage Community Garden. And so every time I had a question, I could call Beth or Eric, and they would give me some answers, or at least give me some insight to what we needed to do, what we should have, you know, how we should pursue it. And our legalities, you know, I had no clue what it took. We wanted to be the garden. It's its own entity. It is on the church property, but it's its own 501c3, and I had no clue how to do that. And so Portage Gardens told us, get a hold of the Valpo Law Clinic. I guess there's a law clinic up there at the university, and the professor runs it, and it allows the law students to experience going through this legal paperwork and what it takes to do that. And so they helped us. So like I said, that was 2015, probably in the fall, we started that paperwork. It wasn't until May of 2016 that we actually got that 501c3 status. We got incorporated, we had our bylaws, and it was a process of emailing to the Valpo Law Clinic, them emailing back, our board meeting, okaying what we saw, the drafts and whatnot, and then getting it back over there. We actually broke ground, tilled ground, and put seed and transplants in June of 2016.
You know, one thing I noticed right here, just by this conversation, it took a lot of work on your part. So you can't tell me that somebody says you're definitely lazy. And when somebody tells you it can't be done, I notice that it gets done. And that's totally one reason that I like you. Actually love you. So anyway, what about the natural season? When you're off the natural season, you know, the bad weather comes, the snow. How do you manage to keep the vegetables coming in?
Well, we've been very fortunate. We have what I like to call a group of friends of the garden. These are people that help financially. They donate, they spend their time, their resources, their talents. A lot of the people in that group, I would say, they're gardeners themselves. And one such gentleman and his wife, Mark and Shirley Rippey, they own a Peaceful Acre Ranch out in North Judson. It's an alpaca ranch in Stark County. Pretty neat. But he had a hydroponic system. It'll grow, I think it's close to 100 plants at a time. It's a $1,500 system, and he said, hey, if you want it, if you're going to use it, we like what you're doing. We hope that it grows. And so in the wintertime, we have a building over here on the property, and we grow cool weather crops through the winter. Your lettuces, you know, pretty much your lettuces is what we grow in that. And so we can grow 100 plants. And the amazing thing about hydroponics is, you know, you plant seeds for lettuce out in the ground out here, and it takes a whole summer for that to grow. But through the hydroponic system, we grow a harvest. We plant the seeds into the system. They grow, and in 2 months, we harvest. And so we start all over. We've actually been giving away lettuce since January this year. So yeah.
That's pretty neat. So obviously, the next question was, do you raise, obviously you raise them in the ground. Now you just mentioned hydroponics. Is there any other way that you raise them as well?
No, not really. I mean, we're standing in our greenhouse here, and this greenhouse, for a greenhouse, it's small, but the whole purpose of this greenhouse is to get an early start. And we can actually start in here in late February, early March, whereas if we were just planting out in the ground, you would have to wait till May to even plant seeds. And so we can actually start in here, and this gives us a kind of a leg up when it comes to getting plants in the ground. When people are just buying or just putting seeds in the ground, we already have transplants that are 6 to 8 inches tall. And so we primarily plant in the ground out in the garden. We do the hydroponics, and then we do starts. Our whole goal is, you know, we do purchase transplants from local growers. Everything we grow is non-GMO, and our practices are, and this is how I put it, organic as possible, because to be certified organic takes a lot, and we're not there yet. If we can get there someday, then that would be great. But right now, our processes of how we grow things, our techniques, everything is as organic as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hear a lot of people talk organic. I wonder how much of that is actually true, you know?
Yeah.
So, how much time do you spend gardening? I mean, obviously it takes, you're a pastor of a church, you're busy, you know, you got kids in college, and you got one in high school, and I'm sure you have board meetings, and you know, like you said, you're human, you have family time too as well. So what kind of time do you spend with the gardening? Does it take a lot of time?
It really varies. We pick days, and we announce, and we advertise when we're going to have work days out here. And you know, some days we'll have a dozen volunteers. Some days, honestly, some days it's just been me out here, or maybe myself and 2 other people. And it's a pretty big garden, and so it does take a lot of time. But for me personally, well, you know, first of all, gardening is, people have their cool down times, or, you know, times that they take off. One of those for me is gardening. So when I'm out here, it's very peaceful for me. It doesn't bother me to be out here by myself, but there definitely is a lot of work that needs to be done. And so I would say in a week's time, I'm probably out here for sure 3 days a week for maybe just an hour. It depends on my schedule and what's happening at home, and as far as my church schedule and private. But yeah, I'm definitely out here 3 days a week.
Okay, Rick, just 3 more questions, and this may be a little, you may will come to your mind real quick. It may take a little while to think about it, but what do you think your biggest failure was?
Being in a hurry. I think being in a hurry. I was in such, I have, or I should say I always say but there's actually a garden board, and we meet every couple months just to make sure that we're on track for what our 5-year goals are. And then, but me, I always wanted to get plants in the ground. Let's hurry up and do this and do this. And, you know, it really takes a lot of preparation. I've learned so much over the last 2 or 3 years. Uh, just the simple things. Something that you and I had a conversation about earlier is the fact that there's so many things that gardeners can do to make their plants thrive.
Like the eggshells.
Like the eggshells for the tomatoes.
That's a good one.
That it is a good one, and people just, you know, you can watch YouTube videos. I've watched a ton, and when it comes down to it, those of us that work out here, we're ultimately responsible for how things grow. Now, here's the thing: in my own personal garden, if my plants don't do well, that's, you know, it can happen, and that's okay. But you know, we have a threefold mission here, and that's to educate people. We love for people to come out here and say, hey, how do you do this? You know, I'm thinking about a garden. Some people live in a place where they can't put a garden. Maybe they rent, and so they can come out here and they can learn, or maybe they have their own home or have a place. We want to educate people on how to have good, healthy growing practices and show them, you know, we think about bugs in a garden, we think they're all bad, but actually it's about 50-50. 50% of the bugs you see out here are actually beneficial insects. And to recognize that and to know that, and know that, hey, you want those insects in your garden. That seems like a weird thing to say, but it's true. And then the second is giving back. Ultimately, everything we grow here, we give back 100%. We don't charge for the produce. We never will. And the third is having a place of community. We want people to come together and have a place. It's not just vegetables. We put in a butterfly garden. We're going to end up putting benches in around the butterfly garden so people can come out, they can have conversations, maybe eat a lunch on a lunch break, and then just enjoy the scenery out here. So, yeah.
Well, you mentioned a lot of successes on there as well. So, what do you feel anyway was your biggest success of this?
Well, I've got multiple on that. The first one for me is the relationships and the conversations I have with people.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, I've been able to have conversations. I've been able to meet people out here and have conversations, and not all our conversations are about gardening, and that's okay. The organizations that we've helped, and that also those relationships, you know, I've learned a lot about some of the ministries in this county, things I didn't even know that were taking place, and I never would have had those conversations if it wasn't for being involved in the garden and contacting these people. Business owners, church leaders, government officials at the local level. I just would have never rubbed shoulders with these people, I don't think, under any other circumstance. And so that was probably the biggest one, is the fact that just these relationships. And I would say the other one is a success for me personally, is the knowledge I've gained about gardening, about things that I had no clue. You know, we hear all the time about the honeybees and what's happening with them, and you know, that can get political, but the fact of the matter is there's so much that can be learned in agriculture and horticulture, and all the things that take place. And so for me personally, it's a success to gain some knowledge. And this is my definition of wisdom, is knowledge with experience applied. And so I think I've gained, I'm not wise, but I think I've gained a lot of wisdom in some of the things that take place in the garden. I would also say a big success is the fact that our mission, our threefold mission, is happening. We are giving back, we are creating community, and we are educating people. Hopefully we get to the point where you know, the church graciously allows the garden to be on this property, and we can use the fellowship hall. What we'd like to do in the future is, as we grow things, have cooking classes. Invite the community to come in and say, well, this is an eggplant. You ever ate one? Well, this is how you can cook it. You know, how many people have ate eggplant? I never did until about 2 years ago.
Huh.
So I know, and I know I'm not the only one.
Me.
So it's just opportunity. I would say those are probably the three biggest successes.
Yeah, that's pretty good. One last question, but before that last question, I noticed you're involved. I think you mentioned to me the Merit Foundation, and you also mentioned to me that Bertha Blue was involved with giving clothes to the needy all year
Yes.
long, and that
Yes.
is I never knew that about her. You know, you don't know. That's like you said, you meet people, you don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
You know, until you rub shoulders. So one last question. Is there something that I forgot to ask you that I should have?
Well, I don't know per se, but I guess I would take liberty at this time to say that if people would like to be involved, if they would like to know more about it,
That is good.
that first of all, the garden is located on the Knox Nazarene Church in the back. It's 1801 South Heaton here in town in Knox. Also, you can give me a call, Rick Martin, 574-249-9378. That's my cell phone. And, you know, we're on Facebook. The garden has its own Facebook page. And so you can look up Ken Cray Community Garden. And there's pictures on there. There's videos. There's events that come up. You know, for us, we've been blessed with some grant money to build this greenhouse and to do some other things. But, you know, in February, we have an annual spaghetti dinner, and that's kind of a big fundraiser for us. And then in the fall, in September, we have a fish fry. And so those events will be posted on our Facebook page. And, you know, we're always looking for hands. You know, when in doubt, pull a weed. That's kind of what I say.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you come out here and you're like, well, I don't know what to do, or, you know, we invite people to come out, even if it's not a scheduled day. And here's the big difference on that. If we schedule a day, then we open up the building, we bring out all the tools that are necessary. If you come out on your own, and you're more than welcome to, you would probably have to bring your own tools because no one's going to be here to unlock the building. So, and there's some people that do. I'll drive by here and I'll see someone out working, and if I can stop, I'll stop and have a chat with them. You know, we have all kinds of stuff. There's always something to do in a garden. There's always something that has to take place. So we're always looking for volunteers.
Can we just walk around and take
Sure.
a look real quick
Sure.
and see
Yeah, absolutely.
what you got?
Absolutely.
People are probably wondering what this has to do with life insurance, and life insurance is actually about making a difference in the lives of people, more so about their lifestyle, about their visions. It's not
Sure.
just protecting them if something happens. It's about protecting those around them or the dreams that are around them. So that's why I do a lot of things. And people are, you know, make mistakes, and
Sure.
so a lot of this stuff isn't edited. So show me what you got, Rick.
Okay, well, over here is a butterfly garden, and all the plants that are in there are either, and most people don't know this, they think they just plant flowers and that's all you need, but you need nectar plants and you need host plants. The nectar plants feed the butterflies, but the host plants is where they lay their eggs or they take shelter. And so we were able to build this. And we have a fence around it because some of the deer like to eat the flowers, and so that's been an issue for us. And there's the greenhouse. That's where we just left. The very first thing we put in was the pump house. We got the ability, we made sure that we were legal, and we drove a well. It's an 18-foot well, and then it's underground. You can see the pipe all the way to this spigot, all the way to that spigot to the end. And
That's pretty cool.
that way we can water everything.
You guys think things through before.
Yeah.
There's I guess you would say mission impossible.
Yeah.
So
This is our newest addition. We just put this grow plot in this year, actually about 3 weeks ago. It's got green beans, bush beans in it, and as you can see, they're starting to pop up. They don't all pop up at the same time. And we have rabbits out here, so we have a fence around this also. The grape arbor, which you could see over there, was put in this spring. It's got grapevines on it, and eventually we're going to have benches underneath it. We have close to a dozen, maybe, I think, maybe 8, 9, 10 raised beds. Some of them, we try to do what's called succession gardening, where you can plant radishes, let's say in March, April. They're done in 30 days, you pull it out, and then you can repurpose the bed and put in something, you know. We have onions and we have garlic, there's eggplants and rhubarb. This over here, all this was the original plot, all the way from that end, and it kind of takes a U shape here. We got strawberry beds in the middle, we have pole beans on those makeshift, what do you want to call them, trellises. And this is the amazing thing. I got a hold of our local Sears store, and all those skids were skids that lawn tractors come on. And he was, the owner was looking for a way to get rid of those skids. And I said, I'll take them. I'll take whatever you got. And so I go there about once a month, and he'll have 3 or 4 of them. And we put them, wire them together, and we put garden string on it. And then the pole beans will actually weave up and over on each side. And so we're repurposing something that would go to a landfill or have to be burned up. Kudos to a bunch of local businesses. Back to Basic Health Foods here in town at the Knox Mall. We get things like Epsom salt. We get the natural things from them. Tractor Supply has generously, the last 2 years, all those fruit trees you see in the back there, those were all donated from our local Tractor Supply. Brad Craig Trucking donates topsoil to fill our beds, and that's what's in that pile back there with the tarp on it. Grow Your Own Organics, it's downtown. Mitchell, he is an amazing, very well educated individual when it comes to growing seasons. He has helped us with building of beds. We have volunteers that come out in the spring, and we always have a goal. We have a lofty goal. We would like to put close to 50 beds here, and so every year we're just doing 3 or 4 or 5 at a time, Lord willing, and we're working this way. We have potatoes, and the funny thing is potatoes are actually relatively cheap to buy in the store, but we've had so many people ask about potatoes, so this year we decided to grow potatoes. And that'll take all season. It's something that takes a whole growing season to grow. We have onions, another thing that's relatively cheap, but there's a lot of people in the community that they can't even afford to buy onions or potatoes, and so we're just doing the best we can. We have that was a garlic bed. These are bell peppers. Like I said, these are eggplants, these are onions. We have close to 60 tomato plants, I believe. And that'll give us a good harvest. We got 2 lines here. We have cucumbers on one side and zucchini on the other, and then we have a row of tomato plants down the center. And like I said, when we pull the onions out, we can actually grow something else. Our desire is to grow all year long if possible. And so yeah, we have our own compost bin. It looks like a mess over there, but it's actually it's organized chaos. We have 3 compost bins made of skids, and we take the materials and we repurpose them, we compost them. Eventually we want to put in a small, a blueberry patch? That's not called an orchard. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome, Rick. It's getting time to close it down here because we're almost at the 30-minute mark, and we're losing. I'll tell you, I'm the same way and passionate, and your vision is totally great. This here reminds me you're going to grow the grapevines over it. Yep. And it reminds me of the Roman days when they used to sit or eat under grapevines and pick and eat. So anyway, this is Rob Owens signing off, and come on down to the Knox Nazarene Church and Ken Craig Community Garden. He is more than happy to help with any questions you may have.
Yep, absolutely.
So, checking out, signing off. Say goodbye, Rick.
Bye.